There are two new names on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. Together, they bring the total number of people in that notorious group to 500. The list is an essential law enforcement tool. Our senior correspondent, John Miller, is a former FBI assistant director. John, yes.
He is? Did you know that?
Yes,
Funny, you've never mentioned that before.
Well, good morning, former assistant director.
Good morning. Someday I'll tell you how I lost that job.
Loading boxes.
You've solved the mystery. So this is about the 10 most wanted list, which is one of the most important tools in the FBI. It was literally invented. There's a lot of stories, but the real story is it was literally invented by J. Edgar Hoover and the editor of UPI over a card game. When one of them said, who's the 10 toughest guys out there, they made a list. And it was such a big hit in the newspapers, they kept it going because once it was in the papers, they caught 2 or 3 of these guys who were fugitives.
That's how the list of 10 got started way back when.
Now, this is a milestone because they have added the 499th and 500th. And when you have a program that dates that far back to 1949 and you've caught 469 out of the 500, you know you've got something that works. So they chose these guys very carefully. And you've got Walter Lee Williams.
Yes.
Here is not your average 10 most wanted candidate. He's a former professor from the University of Southern California. Taught anthropology, and he traveled around the world to the Philippines, to Thailand, supposedly for research. FBI believes that all of these trips were disguised to pick up children and continue his activities of being an alleged sexual predator. And he is wanted for a string of those crimes. So he is one of those. The other one is Jose Manuel Garcia Guevara, who is wanted for a rape and murder that was committed in front of a child. So these are both very serious crimes, but how do you get on the 10 most wanted list? What's the criteria? Who do they pick and why? My office used to work with the criminal division, and we would pore over the candidates, and you would have 3 basic criteria. Was the crime serious? Are they dangerous? That's one. Number 2, would publicity aid in their capture? Meaning, does everybody in the public already know about this person? When people ask, why was Osama bin Laden on the list? That's because he went on the list in 1998 when a lot of people didn't know who he was or what he looked like. And then, you know, the last case, would publicity make a difference? And what you see with the success rates of the program is the answer is definitely yes. I predict they'll get both of these guys.
And Whitey Bulger was or was not on the list?
Whitey Bulger was on the list. And, you know, here's a funny thing. Whitey Bulger knows the power of that list because once Osama bin Laden was killed and that hit the news, Whitey Bulger woke up the next day and said, I'm in trouble because now I move up a notch. And very shortly thereafter, he was in custody.
Let me talk to you about another mobster, the inspiration for Robert De Niro's character in Goodfellas. They were digging at that mobster's house in Queens yesterday. Why?
Yeah, and they'll continue that dig today. You know, there's an old saw in the mob about the old gangster who calls his son and says, I'm very sad because I'm too old and in too much pain to dig up the garden to plant the tomatoes this year. And his son hangs up the phone and says, Pop, I'll take care of it. Calls the FBI and says, I got a tip for you. There's a body buried in the old tomato garden behind the old man's house. And of course, they come there, dig it up, find nothing, and he calls his father and says, you can plant the tomatoes now. This is kind of an annual, stay with me, Charlie. This is kind of an annual rite of spring. Right now, they're digging for Jimmy Hoffa.
I know, right? Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
They're digging for Jimmy Hoffa up here. They're digging up Jimmy Burke's driveway, you know, for the 1978 Lufthansa money and associated bodies along the way. There's a reason it happens in spring. They always get this information in February, and then they take a long time to get that warrant because nobody wants to be out there.
This reminds me of a story that Bob Hope, there was a story about Bob Hope once that he had $500 million and he came home and his wife, he said, well, who's been digging in my backyard? He said, his wife said, it was me. I'm looking for that 500,000 or 500 million.
Well, I think they're looking for a body at Jimmy Burke's house. That we know. But I don't think they'd be surprised if they found money. Out of the Lufthansa robbery, that was $5 million. They recovered all of 20,000. So it's out there somewhere, whatever wasn't spent.
John Miller, good to see you. Thank you so much.